Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Boro Fan TV. James Hutchinson here with this week's edition of the Monday Night Show. Boro enter the international break on the back of two disappointing results at home against Cardiff City and Rotherham, leaving us in the relegation zone after 10 matches. Boro fans, what in your opinion needs to be done to kickstart our season? Joining me to look back on those two games and Boro's season so far are Damon LaRoche and Tony Guest. Welcome to the show, boys.
Evening, James. Evening, Damon.
Cheers. Evening.
Great to have you all out there watching. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of feedback from you Boro fans with regards to what's happening at our club at the moment. So please, as always, get yourselves involved. You know the usual way to do so and join us in tonight's debate. So, Tony, I'm going to come to you first, pal. One of the most discussed issues since Chris Wilder became manager is the formation he employs. The three centre-bafs, the wing-backs. Do you think we've got to a stage now where maybe things need to change, Tony?
I was, after watching the first half against Cardiff, the formation we're playing definitely wasn't working. You know, I was screaming for Paddy McNair to be put back into the back three. But against Cardiff, he was absolutely woeful. Individual mistakes cost us the first two goals for me. Maybe all three goals were individual mistakes and poor defending. So it's like what Wilder said. The system worked against Swansea. The system worked against Watford. You know, the games we've won, Sunderland, he said the system's worked. And he said it's got absolutely nothing to do with the system. It's down to form of the players plus the individual mistakes. And there's no way he was going to change the formation. Then the next day in an interview I read, which I think was in the Gazette, he turned around and said, I seen the interview on the TV. He turned around and said, if things don't improve, he said, yeah, obviously we may have to change the formation and, you know, go to a bit more, less exciting football to get some points on the board. So on one hand, he's saying he's not changing. And the next hand, he's saying he's listening to the fans, he's listening to other people, that he may change the formation. So, you know, he really baffles me, does Wilder, now in some of these press conferences, the stuff that he's coming out with, James. Plus, he also said, people are wanting me to play two up front. And he said, we've always played two up front. He said, since I started, he said, I've played with a 9 and a 10, which, yeah, fair enough, which I think he has with McGree and Moniz since he come in, or whoever, Akpom. So, like you say, we're all screaming for two up top. And I believe in Wilder when he says he has tried to play with two up top in the formation, the 3-5-2.
David Jackson's got involved already on the show, Dave. He said we need to get back to basics and try to keep clean sheets. I think part of the problem this season, though, Damon's been the midfield department appears to be really struggling at the moment, and I think a lot of that's down to Marcus Tavernier's departure. How can we resolve the gap that's been left by his move to Bournemouth?
Well, he's tried to play, as Guesty touched on it there, he's tried to play Riley there, hasn't he? And it's not worked. It's worked in a couple of games, but not to the extent that Tav would bring to the table. And for me, I think we lacking them leaders that we used to have years ago, and we don't seem to have a clear leaders. I mean, you've got Johnny, yeah, but Johnny can't do it on his own. He's 34, you know what I mean? I think we need a few more bodies in that midfield who are going to die for the cause, because at the moment we haven't got that, and I can't see a way out if things are going to get worse. And I think Wilder berating the team he's berating he has a go at the team when he's in his press conferences, but at the end of the day, he's got to question himself with the tactics that he's putting out with the formation. I think he needs to rip that up and start a new formation. Whether it be, I would personally have 4-3-3, but it's a different story, you know.
Tony, Ian Hills mentioned there that he feels as though we're heading for the drop, and I suppose irrespective of what formation you set up, whether it's 4-3-3, 5-3-2, I think it's more of a question of attitude that there's a bit of a problem at the moment. And I mean, to be 3-0 down to what, in my opinion, was a poor Cardiff City side last week, to be 3-0 down to them at home after 40 minutes, that's just unacceptable, isn't it?
It's unacceptable. It's, I think they'd only scored 3 goals all season. They were having an absolute nightmare run. They've come to the Riverside. They've stuck 3 past us in 45 minutes. A game later, they sacked their manager. So that's how poor they are. And we just didn't have nothing. I spoke to people after the game, James, and there was a few fans saying to me that we played like a team of lads where the managers lost the dressing room because there didn't seem to be absolutely any instruction or them players following any structure, any formation or anything. You've got Matty Crooks, it's 0-0 and he miscontrols the ball, you know what I mean, in a dangerous place. One, McNair wants a good effing for passing the ball there to him, and obviously Crooks, he plays that he thinks he's a white Pele and he thinks he's playing for Man United. We're getting beat 2-0 and he's still trying back flicks and little flicks here and there. We're getting beat. Get the ball, keep hold of it and pass it. But it's all right having the ball and passing it, but even when I'm sat 3 rows back in the south stand and you can see a forward pass on, and for some reason at the moment, Jones and Crooks and anyone who's been playing down that right-hand side, the first thing that comes into their head is to turn back towards their own goal and start to build again from the centre halves. And it's are they afraid? Are they afraid of what the manager's going to say if they don't maintain possession? You watch reruns of games from years ago and the game was so much more simple. Every pass was nearly a forward pass, where now, I've been saying it for years and people are saying it now, when centre halves are getting more touches of the ball than your centre midfield and your centre forward, I don't know what the game's coming to, James, because possession-based football, it's a championship. You know what I mean? You do have to grind out results, but you can be a bit more direct than what we've been, James.
Yeah. Fair point, Tony. I mean, Damon, as Tony alluded to there, Steve Morrison's no longer the Cardiff manager, but he claimed post-match that when Boro have more of the ball, they tend not to win as many games because you just push up on them, press them higher up the pitch, and then you're going to get some joy. You're going to get the ball from them. And we become too predictable in our style of playing to play against.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chris Wilder dismissed it, didn't he, in his interview? He said, after a load of old tosh, he said with what Morrison said, basically. But for me, Steve Morrison was right because we are predictable right now. Isaiah Jones is a prime example of that. Last season, he was beating players for fun on the wings, cutting inside, beating them no ends up. And this year, he's a shadow of his former self. He doesn't even look half the player he was. And I think the key reason behind that, in my opinion, is because he's got no competition there. I think if he had perfect competition there, I mean, Darnell Fisher, we know, got an injury. No one's mentioned him, obviously, because he's out injured. For me, if there was someone with a bit of quality to test Jones, I think Jones would easily be dropped from that team.
Yeah. Patrick Wheatley, thanks for watching. Pally, go on.
It's not just Jones. It's not just Jones.
No,
you know what I mean?
No.
Jones can only operate when he's got the ball high up the pitch. And like you say, he's getting the ball in positions now where he's got to turn back and face his goal. We're not penetrating like the first 3 or 4 games where we were getting in behind defences with Giles and Jones. You know, Giles hasn't been tearing no trees up, in the last few games. He's as much to blame as anyone else. And anyone who's put a Boro shirt on in them last 2 home games, they all want to frigging hang their heads in shame.
But I was touching it today with me father. I said the biggest mistake Boro have made this season is letting Piero go. because Piero could have played the number 10 role for me.
It certainly leaves you a bit bemused now when you think that, obviously, I don't think at that stage the club were planning on Tav going, but as it appears as though Tav wanted to leave, still other clubs have been in that situation. They don't let players leave until you've got a replacement in place, and we're just so thin on the ground at the minute in midfield. I mean, Tony, I was just going to mention to you there, some people are saying, have we not got the players that are capable of playing the system that Wilder wants to use, or do you think the players don't believe in the system? Do you think there's any sort of evidence in that theory?
I think there's a bit of both, James. I don't know what's going on with Paddy McNair. Paddy McNair seems to have lost all his belief. And he's lost all his belief in what Wilder's asking him to do, or whether he's pissed off because he's gone back in a back three. I don't know, but there's some of them players who've been playing the system for a long time, and they're just not cutting it, James. It's absolute joke, mate.
There's been some people, Damon, over the last week have started calling for Chris Wilder's head. I've lost Tony for a second there. I'll just bring you back in, Damon. What's your thoughts on that when people start to call for the managers' heads? What do you think about that?
I think it's ludicrous, really. I mean, at the moment, fair enough if you were like 25, 30 games in, then or half the games in, then you could probably say, oh well, if we still need the bottom three in half games in, then they can judge and say, oh well, he needs to go. But now 7 or 8 games in, I mean, it's ludicrous, isn't it, James? I mean, fans have got to think. He said before the start of the season, it'll take 3 or 4 windows before we get up to par with what we want to build and what the team wants to do. But for me, I agree with Tony, what he said about Paddy McNair. He's not the same player as he was last season as well. I think it's just, for me, when I go to games and I see from the West Stand, I see sideways, backways passing, and you can see the easy ball, can't you? And then it just doesn't happen with us. We can't pick a pass forward.
Sometimes I agree with that, Damon, the sideways and backwards passing. But you know, when you've got 11 players behind the ball and you're trying to break them down, but it's so monotonous. There's no pace in it, and there's actually no one got the balls to try and make a forward pass. You know, I haven't got a problem with when we're keeping possession that way, but you've still got to try and find your striker. You've still got to try and find the ball in behind. Man City, all these top teams, all find a way to win games, and 90% of their games, they're playing against 11 men behind the ball. So, like you say, teams have sussed us out. So, surely, in training, Wilder's is doing that week in, week out with them, trying to break a defence down. But if you've got
Tony, when I saw the first game of the season against West Brom, the first half in particularly, we were on fire. I mean, on fire. I mean, yes, the West Brom got to kick up the arse and obviously got to draw out the game at the end, but we were on fire, and I thought we would kick on from there, and it just seemed.
Going back to West Brom, we thought we were, playing against one of the top teams in the division. They're on the same point as us. So was that 2 points dropped against a team that's struggling? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah. Ryan Buckley's got in touch with you. He said Wilder's too stubborn with his formation and tactics. The 3 at the back with a midfield lacking in creativity and energy isn't working. And replacing Tav and Piero with Mowat hasn't been successful, in Ryan's opinion. I mean, Tony, I asked Damon before you left a few minutes ago about the manager's situation. People are starting to call for Chris Wilder's head and your thoughts on that. But do you think at this current time, what the club needs more than anything is a bit of stability? Because it seems as though for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been almost every season we're looking at chopping and changing managers. Do you think we just need to settle down and say, look, this is our manager for the foreseeable, come what may, and let him get on with the job?
It's difficult with Boro fans because you get you know, you've got your season ticket holders going week in, week out, and obviously with the momentum Wilder built up last season, we've had a lot of people coming in, you know, new faces every week sat next to you. So the people who are calling for the manager to be sacked, you know, are obviously they're all Boro fans and they're entitled to their opinion. But I'm usually one of the first to jump on the bandwagon to sack the manager. But this has been going on too long since Karanka got sacked. You know, we need a bit of stability. And like Wilder said in his interview the other day, he's been a manager a long time. He's had the good times, but he's also been through the bad times, and he knows how to tough it out. He says, and hopefully, you know, he usually comes through the other end. So, like you say, it's what we were discussing earlier. A lot of it could be down to the recruitment, the players that's come in, because Mowat, for me, you know, when we seen him a couple of seasons ago playing for Barnsley,
yeah,
he was ripping the division up, and you know, he was carrying that Barnsley team, and he's come here, and I don't think I've seen him make one sprint yet, James. I haven't seen him, you know, bust a gut to win a tackle. I haven't seen him bust a gut to get to the second ball, you know, and like you say, that's always been my problem with loanees. They're not as committed to the club to someone who's signed on the dotted line, and for me, he's just been a waste of space. He's a waste of dubbing on his boots, you know what I mean? His boots aren't worth cleaning for the performances he's been putting in for the Boro.
Yeah. Damon, I've had Daniel Joseph and Craig Dinsdale talking about the recruitment side of things and maybe Chris Wilder not being backed by the club. Craig Dinsdale, in particular, has mentioned about getting rid of Wilder would be insane. If he does get the bullet, who do you replace him with? He's a good manager, but he hasn't had the backing. I know when Chris Wilder came in, he said it might take around about 3 transfer windows to get the squad that he wants. You think we've had 2 now? I would probably suggest it's going to be more than 3, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be. It could even be 4 or 5, James. That's how bad it is at the moment. To get the players he wants, because, and the frustrating thing is he's not had the back. We're saying he's not had the backing, but 10 players he's brought in. Yes, the frees and the loans and stuff, but there's 10 players and there's 10 lots of wages there, isn't there? So,
but do you think there are players he wants, Damon? Because
no, I don't think. We were touching on it today. That Matthew Hoppe is not his signing. I don't think Matthew Hoppe is his signing because he'd clearly be in the team and he's clearly scored in the week, hasn't he? And you know, he would be in the team. He'd be forcing the team, and I don't think he's Wilder's signing. Not a chance.
What's your thoughts on this? David Eslop's got in touch, Tony. He said, do you think the players are playing for Chris Wilder, or do you think it's simply a case of they're lacking in confidence at the minute, Tony? Or what do you put it down to?
They certainly weren't playing for him first half against Cardiff. You know, does he come across as a dictator towards these players where, you know, you listen to these experts on the TV that it's an old style of management and players don't respond to it. But you can't beat a good old-fashioned kick up the arse for me, you know what I mean? And they definitely didn't want to be playing for Chris Wilder the first half against Cardiff for me. You know, we're touching on the recruitment there. There's Liliana Morgan's message. What's happening with Hoppy or Hoppy? Freaking out, we can all do with a bit of hope being Boro fans. He's not a Chris Wilder signing. He's a signing which, you know, it took me aback a bit when I read that he's a signing which the club have made for the future. So if, you know, what the future's now, the future's what, like Chris Wilder said, you know, which was bang out of order, by the way, you know, when he said we've been out of that division for a long time. I don't know why the fans' expectations are so high. I'll tell him why the fans' expectations are so high is because the likes of himself, our chairman, and the people at Recruitment keep mentioning the league he didn't want to talk about, and that, you know, we're going to try and, you know, make this a successful season. It's something to look forward to. But he hasn't, for me at the moment, with them players, he hasn't got a cat and else chance, James.
Yeah.
And it's if we stick or twist. And for me, we've definitely got to stick at the moment and get to Christmas. And he either kicks down Scott and Bowser's door to get what he wants, or we're going to come February, March, where we're still in a dogfight to stay in the division.
I think that's the problem. I think that's the problem we've got, Tony, is the fact being that the chairman came out a few years ago, didn't he? He said we'd smash the league. And I think he's frightened to do it now because he knows for a fact it could go tits up.
Well, it's gone tits up for Gibson anyway because he's never made another statement since he made that one. You know what I mean? You won't hear much from Gibson now anyway because Kieran Scott's his main man now. Kieran Scott's his iron fireman for me. You know what I mean? So I think Scotty, needs to beam Bowser up and get him out of our club for me.
And we've just made an appointment though, haven't we? In
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones, yeah. Some scouting.
Palace, yeah. But he's going to be working underneath Kieran Scott. I mean, Tony, David Jackson mentioned, I put up on the screen a few minutes ago about saying that sadly the team seems to be getting worse each transfer window. And you mentioned Matthew Hoppy there. Marcus Force joined us as well and has had very little game time. I mean, we've spent over £5 million there on two forwards, which, to be honest, don't look like they've got any sniff of getting anywhere near the first team. And they're behind Duncan Watmore and Chuba Akpom, who the club were more than happy in the summer to say they were on the way out the club. It just doesn't seem as though the recruitment is joined up at all in terms of its thinking.
No, and are them two signings better than Hutchy? We practically, banished to the wilderness. I don't know whether he's left the club or whether he got paid off. Are them two better than Hutchy? When he was at the club.
Well, my opinions on Hutchy. My opinions on Hutchy. He's working the coke can.
Because that Force. What difference are you going to bring? He came on against Rotherham, and I don't think he touched the ball, James. But on the plus side, I am impressed with he's a loanee, and I'm impressed with Muniza's commitment and effort in these games. But he's another centre forward, a skillful centre forward who's most probably deadly in the box, but we haven't got the clientele to get the ball to him. So, where he can be at his most devastating. He's a big lad. He doesn't want to be running about for 90 minutes.
We've spoke about Dyer Jones earlier on there, Damon. Another player who came back into the side following the defeat Cardiff last week, though, was Anthony. It looks like he's going to have a pretty important and incredibly crucial role to play in Boro in the next few weeks. Inside, does Damon?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? You were just a bit laggy there, Jim.
Just going to say there, Anthony Dijksteel came back into the side for the game against Rotherham at the weekend. Do you see him having a more important role to play in the team over the next few weeks?
Oh yeah, I think I'd rather start him than McNair, to be brutally honest, because coming out from the back, he's got the pace to come out from the back. Clark, he does it, but when they took Clark off and put Bowler on, it sort of changed the game. That's how we got the 2 goals. But obviously we can't give him a free goals head start in that Cardiff game. But yeah, for me, Dijksteel has definitely got to be a starter because he's good coming out from the back. Yeah, for sure.
He's the only one. He's the only one who's got any pace.
Yeah.
Where we can play 3 at the back comfortable. Do you know what I mean?
Centre half, Tony. I mean, we've used him previously in right back, haven't we? But as I playing there, so
right back, left back, he play anywhere. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I think that's why I mentioned earlier on, Tony. In terms of Wilder's system, if you're playing 3 centre backs and you want them to come out with the ball, they've got to be comfortable with the ball. I'm not so sure what Dale is. I think Dijksteel is. On what we've seen so far, I don't think Matt Clark is either. So again, are we putting square pegs into round holes in saying that we have to have this system and we have to use the 3 ball-playing centre-backs when I don't think we've got ball-playing centre-backs at the club?
well, like you said, Dale likes to carry it out, but Dale carries it out, puts the brakes on, turns round and looks for a sideways. And like you say, if you haven't got the centre halves who's got the football brain, to carry the ball out and to make a decent pass, like you say, you just, it's a pointless task. So, do you go to 4-4-2 to play to your strengths? Because I think Matt Clark and Dale would be absolutely, solid in a back four, but it's how you fit people in around them too. And do you push Jones and Giles up into your midfield, and bring Bowler back and Dyke Steele as your fullbacks, and stick Watmore and Moniz up front. You could go that way, and then obviously he's not going to drop Johnny Howson. It's who he plays alongside Johnny Howson, because, like you say, McNair got the hook for Saturday, and I bet you Matty Crooks wasn't far behind getting it.
Yeah. Daniel Wilkinson said, "You've hit the nail on the head. We don't have the players to play how Wilder wants. It really is as simple as that. He needs to look at playing the players to their full strengths." Just want to bring you in on this one, Damon. Lee Fields got in touch. He said, "What's happened to our academy? Where's the lads coming through? We're buying loads with not the greatest of records from other clubs and countries. What does that say about the lads coming through?" Are you a little bit concerned that things do seem to have dried up a little bit from the academy, or do you think it's just maybe a case that the manager doesn't feel that they're ready to take that step up yet?
I don't think he thinks they're ready, to be honest, which is a shame, because there's a rare talent in our academy, and we've always produced from that academy. And now there's a few who, questionably, with the team the way it's playing at the moment, could quite easily be given a chance in that team. Kavanagh is one. Joe Gibson is another one. There's Sonny Finch. There's a few good players in there, but Wilder doesn't obviously trust the kids. That's why he hasn't put Hopper in yet, has he? And he's always started them in the under 21s, which is a real shame, because he needs to look at the kids.
How old's Hoppy like?
21.
21, yeah. I mean, Tony, sometimes it can work the other way. They might not have a great deal of experience, but they might be fearless and just come into the team and take to it like a duck to water. I mean, in terms of the minute, we're talking about a lack of confidence. Yes, people are talking about Isaiah Jones and it's his second full season, but I'm looking at the last two games and I'm seeing experienced professional footballers in Johnny Howson, Alex Mowat, Paddy McNair, Matt Clark, Matt Crooks. They're all experienced players. They look as though they're absolutely on the knees in terms of confidence at the minute. They're rock bottom, don't they?
And that's where I think that's where the communication between the manager and what's going on in the field may be something to do with their form, James. Like you say, they've been in and around, this league and football for a long time, and there may be a bit of conflict between the senior pros and Wilder at the moment. You know what I mean? Because, like you say, we've said it for the last two seasons, but I think this season it's starting to show with Johnny now. With he's still at 8 out of 10 nearly every game, but he's getting caught a hell of a lot in possession the last few games. Going back to the Watford game, he seems to be, either dawdling on the ball too long because he's got no options, or he's starting to slow down a bit.
Yeah. I mean, Lee Fields again said, you have to find a balance between youth and experience, pick the spine, let the young lads flourish. And we also had David Jackson saying that last year, Wilder was quite happy to play Balogun and Connolly. I don't know how successful that was, though, Damon. It didn't seem to work out too well for us that at the end of the season, did it?
No, I mean, judge on that midfield, though, what's the news on Dale Stevens still training with us, or the Fabian Delph rumours? I mean, for me, I'd be snapping up at least one of them or two of them like a shot. Yes, there might be 30 odd, but so is Johnny Howson, and if they can, they are leaders. If they can put in the work, why not have them at the club?
For me, Fabian Delph would be a no-brainer. You know what I mean? even just having an around the changing room and some. But Dale Stevens, they've all, I think he's had his time. But if anyone comes in and improves our midfield, like I keep seeing Piero's name popping up here. I wish he was still at our club, but I think it was homesickness more to do with anything than than him wanting to leave. Obviously, with him wanting to leave the club and go back home. So if a player's like that, you can't make him stay.
Speaking about Piero, I watched him at the weekend on the Boca Juniors match, and he scored 2 goals. So
yeah,
it's proven even more West, that we let him go.
Don't forget a lot of these players that's been signed have been signed by the previous manager, and you know what I mean. So that's a problem our squad's got at the moment.
Yeah. And again, that's what happens when you keep changing your manager as well, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, but like you say, like you've just been on about Kavanagh there. I'm surprised he's been nowhere near the Fest team. He's been around a couple of years now, and he still hasn't managed to impress a manager enough and break into a Fest team or be a regular on the bench.
Yeah, the club got him a new contract in the summer, didn't they? I think it's a 3-year contract they've given, so they obviously rate him. They've got plans for him, but yeah, like as you say, he's not. It
just seems to be always an ongoing trend with us. The young kid who scored the goal against Tottenham last year, you know what I mean? We're on about hungry strikers and players who are fearless. He was that type of striker for me, and obviously he was injured at the start of the season, and now he's gone away on loan, and we're struggling to score goals. We've let most probably one of the best goal scorers at the club leave.
See, I know he needs game time as well, but I wouldn't loan him out for a second. But obviously, he sees he's going to have to, and obviously he's agreed when he's fit, isn't he? Josh Coburn, that's another thing. I wouldn't be loaning him out now. We're struggling. But
Jason Coleman's in agreement with you, Tony. There, he said Piero wanted to go home. There was nothing more the club could have done to have kept the lad. And in his opinion as well, Delph would be a great signing. Damon, we started the season with really bright hopes. It's only 10 games into the season. Realistically, though, at this current time, where do you see our season heading?
Well, if it carries on, I mean, the way it's gone, you could look to the next, say 15, 20 games in, and if still things aren't the same, then Wilder could go. I'm not saying it could be a possibility, but it could be. Would I like to see it happen? No, because I like Wilder and I like what he's trying to achieve at the club. But fans dictate where the manager goes, and so do the players that perform on the pitch. But for me, I see one way, and that's probably mid-table at present, the way we're looking, and that's being generous.
Right. Chris Sykes has said mid-table as well. He thinks it's going to be a mid-table season. Patrick Waitley's saying down for me, bottom 3. Sorry, lads. I mean, Tone, what's your thoughts? We are only 10 games in. It's 10 games. Got to remember, we're 5 points off 5th place, which is Sunderland at the minute. We're 5 points off 5th. It's very early days. Are you already writing off this season saying, look, there's no chance of us making top 6 this season? Or do you saying, look, let things settle down, there's a hell of a long way to go? What's your thoughts, Tone?
When you look at it, people at the start of the season, after we've had a rough ride since we started, and people were, asking us to calm down, comparing us to Nottingham Forest last season. The difference is Nottingham Forest last season got off to a stinker, sacked the manager, and never looked back. I've said before on this show, I've interviewed fans outside Carrow Road, Norwich fans, the game after the Fest International break. Norwich were in the bottom 3.
Yeah.
And our good old friend AJT was, promising all Boro fans and promising Norwich fans that Norwich were going to go down that season. And I think they went on to absolutely storm the league. So, like I said, I'm always one of the first to jump on sack the manager bandwagons, but now's the time, whether we finish sixth from bottom, whether we finish sixth from top, it's time to stick with a manager and see where he can take us. You've got to give him 2 or 3 years, no matter what's coming down from the stands. You know, Gibson has to still stay strong. Scott has to stay strong and give this man time to try and put a decent club together. Not another manager who's come in, cleared the shelves and put a couple of new trinkets on the shelf. It's not working. You know, from Mowbray clearing the decks, we've had Pulis clearing the decks, we've had Warner clearing the decks. Wilder's come in and done exactly the same, and it's just getting the club deeper and deeper into a rut. We still, you know, we still keep trying. We brought the goalkeeper in, you know, from the best team in the world, their second string goalkeeper, and we've brought a half decent Brazilian striker in. So let's just be patient, or try to be patient, and you know. It's pointless saying give him another transfer window because we will not sign anyone in January. And history will prove that because we just don't buy anyone in January for me. So he's got what he's got and he's got to make the best of it. Yeah, we'll sit and we'll mourn, but we've just got to, for me, we've just got to put up with him.
Ron Finley, thanks for watching, Ron. He said it's early days, but something is definitely wrong with the players at the moment because even our decent players aren't performing. Damon, we've got 10 points from 10 games. Do you think that's a fair reflection of our season? I know Chris Wilder's come out in some interviews and mentioned we're quite a few points lighter than we should be. Do you think 10 points is about right? Should we have a few more points? But what, in your opinion, would be probably a fair reflection of where we should be in the table after 10 games?
Looking at the table, I still think we should be just outside the playoffs, 7th, 8th, something like that. I still think we should be in and around there, but we haven't had the start as Tony judged earlier on in the show. But Nottingham Forest, prime example of it. They sacked the manager. I think it was against us. The game Chris Hughton got the hook, and then they went on a mad run, didn't they? And then got promoted to the Prem, and now they're struggling in the Premier League. So it just goes to show it doesn't always work. And as I said, I'd take anything to be in Nottingham Forest's position right now. I think any Boro fan would. Yeah.
And Tony, Sam Cowling, I think his thoughts are mirroring a lot of Boro fans at the moment. That we had a lot of hope going into the season, but from the performances so far, we've been slightly disappointed, and confidence is starting to drain a little bit from some people and some fans. But do you think this international break's probably come at a good time for us at the minute?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like you say, it gives us something else to focus on. You know, pick the bones out of what's gone on in the last 10 games. You ask Damon there where we should be. You know, we'd singing a different tune if, you know, the 5 points that we dropped, you know, away to Stoke and away to Watford, conceding late goals, you know what I mean? That was 5 massive away points we dropped. We should have came away from both them games with 6 points, and we just, you know, we threw it away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, the performance against Watford away, you know, and the performance against Stoke, I don't think I've seen us perform for a full 90 minutes like we did against Stoke. But the signs were there. You know, no matter how good we played that night against Stoke, we still never came away with 3 points.
Yeah.
So the signs were there. There was something not quite right. But like you say, the international break, thank God for it. And come the end of it, we'll be all chomping at the bit, you know, to get back, you know, shouting the Boro on.
Yeah. It's getting them players back as well, isn't it? As well, like the Lenihan and Chuba Akpom as well from injury.
I'd prefer Lenihan to stay injured, Damon.
Well, yeah, but I prefer, you know, at the moment, I think anyone can get injured, you know, to be honest, and the way the team is. No.
Yeah.
Do you think Akpom will come in, Tony? Akpom will come in partner Muniz up front?
Yeah, because I think Riley McGree's a bit lightweight and he flatters to deceive. He reminds me so much of George Saville, the way he runs, the way he looks, the way, you know, and he's another one who likes to play the ball with the outside of the foot or do a fancy flick here when get your head up and just play a pass into the box. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it'd be nice to see, two decent-sized strikers up top.
See, I don't know why Crooksy's playing. Why doesn't Crooksy play where Riley's playing and push Riley a bit further back? That's what
if you look back at the last few games, where has Crooks been playing, Damon?
Right wing. What I mean on Sky.
You watch him on the tee. You watch him in a game, and he's popping up everywhere on the pitch. I haven't got it.
I thought he played both him and Howson further back on Saturday night, but they played just in front of the back foot, or the three centre half, should I say. He played them a lot deeper, which made us a little bit more solid going back. But again, going forward, we had very little going forward, I think, in that game against Rotherham on Saturday. But, I mean, I don't know. Do you think that's going to be the way forward, Tony, now that he's thinking we have to reduce the number of goals we're conceding? Am I going to play with Howson and Crooks or Howson and McNair? I don't know what, in front of the back three, just to add a bit more protection? I don't know.
Yeah, like you say, maybe he's with a two in front of him, James. It does give, like you say, he likes these overlapping centre halves, and we've only got one that can do it, Dykesdale, because Clark definitely isn't an overlapping centre half. So maybe he's a bit more protection in front of them three, But it's a puzzle for him to solve, and like you say, he keeps telling us he's experienced enough, and he's been through it before to come up with a solution.
For me, sorry. For me, my solution would be just a straight 4-4-2, and play Boro at left back. You got Dykesdale at right back, even though he isn't a right back, but I'd play him there. You've got your Dale Fry and your Matt Clark at centre back, and then you got your wingers in Jones, Giles, and then you've got your midfield of your Johnny Howsons, possibly Riley McGree, and then Crooksy behind the front two of Akpom and Muniz. We can just say that on the thing, but it's only Wilder that can change it.
Yeah. Well, boys, what is for certain is that we've got an international break this week, and then Boro return to action a week on Saturday when they travel to the CBS Arena to take on Coventry City. And Tony, for a number of reasons, Coventry have had a bit of a sticky start to the season, and probably, like us, aren't where they want to be. But there's mitigating circumstances, I think, in their case, isn't there?
Yeah, like you say, it's a sticky start. The pitch, a good downpour on that pitch and made it a bit sticky. It reminded me when I seen it, Highfield Road wasn't always one of the best playing surfaces either. You know what I mean? So the thing is with Coventry that I haven't heard nothing that I don't think they're giving their manager any grief. You know what I mean, for what he's done, for where he's brought the club from, and where he's hoping to take the club to. And they've still got don't know how they managed to keep all of him. Is it Geike? What's he called? Damon? Dyke? That's him, yeah. They've still managed to keep the majority of what they had last season. Like you say, it's only early doors. I know it's 10 games in, and you like to see where your club's at after 10 games. And you wouldn't have expected Middlesbrough, West Brom, Coventry, and Huddersfield down at the bottom of the division. But that's where we are at the moment, and Coventry are down there with us. Obviously, how many games less have they played? Is it 2 or 3?
3 they've played less than us, yeah.
3, yeah.
Yeah, so they've still got 3 games in hand to make points up. So it'll be interesting, James. But at least it's away from home after the international break, and the away fans are a bit more forgiving than the home fans when things aren't going too well.
I mean, it's funny you should say that, Tony. Sorry, Damon, I'll bring you in a second. We've only got 1 point on the road so far, but do you think in a funny sort of way that first game after the international break being away from home is more helpful than it being at the Riverside?
Yeah, definitely, because obviously it's starting to turn a bit toxic at the moment. They've got battling in the South Stand again, so it'll give us all time to have a good calm down. And hopefully the next home game, we've turned a bit of a corner with a good 3 points away to Coventry on the Paddy Field.
And Damon, Tony mentioned there about the issues at Coventry with regards to the pitch and stuff like that, why they had to wait so long to start the season. But they are bottom of the table. They haven't won a game yet, but they have got two players up front who can cause a bit of damage. You've got Matt Godden there, and obviously a player that Boro will link with heavily in the summer in Victor Gyökeres. So they are still dangerous opponents despite their league position, aren't they?
Oh, they are. I think they've got that other midfielder. I think Swansea were after him, West Ham were after him. I think is it O'Hare? Is it someone?
Callum O'Hare. I think he's been injured. He hasn't played recently. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good player as well. I wouldn't have minded him, but the Coventry's issues with their ground. I think Steve Grizovic and Darren Huckabee haven't been doing the jobs properly. But I think for me, no matter what team you play in this league, lads, I think it's every team's a struggle, as we're finding out right now.
Well, that's a good point, that, Dame, because, I mean, I think if you look at, as Tony mentioned earlier, about who's down at the bottom at the minute, there's Coventry, Huddersfield playoff final last year. We were just outside the playoffs. West Brom are a big... And in the past, I think the last few seasons, you've always been able to say, oh, well, there's your three that will go down. We know how weak they are. If you look at the three teams that have come up, they've all had decent starts. I think this year it's going to be hard to find three teams to go down. It's going to be a tough season at both ends of the table, isn't it, Damon?
Well, it is. It's not like the Premier League, just a one-horse race. I mean, for me, this league is the most exciting league in the world for me, because it's so unpredictable for what it is. Luton as well. They've had the struggles. It's like the second season syndrome, if you want to call it that. Same with Huddersfield in the playoffs, and now they're struggling. But we can only just focus on what we have to do, and then Wilder has got to get it right, because if he doesn't get it right, fans will literally push him out the door, and it'll be a sad case.
Yeah, and you mentioned the travelling fans. I think we've sold over 2,000 tickets already for that game at Coventry. There'll be some atmosphere that first game on a Saturday this season, despite it being October. So there'll be some atmosphere inside that stadium a week on Saturday, won't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you say, the good traditional 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday. When do you get one of them now? You know what I mean? But the Coventry fans will be up for it, and like you say, our away fans, our away support is absolutely amazing. You know what I mean? And it's one of the things I'm missing about travelling at the moment, not getting to the away games, because there's no better feeling to see the Boro winning away from home. You know what I mean? And even when you get beat, the company that you have and the camaraderie amongst the fans, it's absolutely fantastic. Away days, for anyone who hasn't experienced them, they need to, because that's where that love of football comes from. You know what I mean? Yeah. And going to someone else's back garden and winning 1-0, 2-0, and pinching their ball and taking it home, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to the predictions in a second, lads. Chris Sykes has said we never do well at Cov. I think we've only won one in the last 6 or 7 there, and I think that was at Birmingham when they played at St Andrews. So
I think Bernie Slaven scored a hat-trick once there, didn't he? Because
that was 88 at Highfield Road. Yeah,
it's like Gary Phillipson's knee. He's never shut up about it. You know what I mean?
I felt just to touch on that as we were going on about the away games. I felt disappointed for the fans, being obviously the circumstances out with the Queen and stuff. Regarding the Blackpool game, I thought that was disappointing, but it is what it is, and then to rearrange it in November, which is, I think it's a bit ludicrous for me. Could have played it as soon as possible, but it's the FA again, isn't it? And the AFL, they dictate. It's probably going to be on Sky at 7:45.
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because both clubs have to agree on a certain date. So if one club says, "Oh, we want to play in the next couple of weeks," and the other says, "Well, no, I'd rather not. I'd rather play later on," there's little they can do. And obviously, there's no gaps in the fixture schedule for it to be on a weekend, so it was going to be a midweek match, wasn't it? So there's not a great deal it could do. I mean, I don't know, Tony, what did you think about the games being off that weekend? Do you think, I know other sports went ahead like cricket and rugby union and stuff. Do you think football should have gone ahead, or do you think it might have got ruined by a few people not behaving themselves on a Saturday, so they thought we'd rather they came back on a midweek when it might be a little bit quieter?
Do you know what, James? Do you know what surprised me? How well football has dealt with the situation with the Queen passing, and every fan at every ground, and I dare say there was a few idiots at every ground, but the singing of the national anthem, the minute silence at most of the grounds, most of the games which I've watched over this last week, the support's been impeccable, and you know, I was absolutely shitting myself how football was going to respond, but you know, English teams, I can't say too much about what goes up in Scotland because obviously their football doesn't interest me, but the way football in it all responded to it was absolutely fantastic. And I felt the game should have been called off for that weekend, James, because like you say, emotions were high. Like you say, it's something we've never witnessed before, you know what I mean? Especially our age, we've never had a Queen die on us, you know what I mean? So it was a funny feeling. So yeah, I think they were well within the rights calling the games off. You know, obviously the cricket and the rugby went ahead, but football's a different beast, different spectator sport altogether.
Very much. Yeah, I agree, Tony. I agree. And yeah, you're totally right. I think the two Boro games in particular, the fans at both those games at the Riverside were absolutely fantastic in how they respected both the minute silence and the national anthem, and I thought they were fantastic. Getting it back to the Coventry game before we finish the show then, boys, let's have your predictions. Come on, Damon. Are we going to get our first away win of the season for Coventry a week on Saturday?
I hope so. I'm going to go 1-0 win.
1-0 Boro. Go on, Tone.
Well, for me, it'll be our third away win of the season because I've still got us beating Watford and beating Stoke. So, you know, we're struggling at the back. We're struggling up front. I'm going to go, you know, I can't say past. I'll go for a 1-1 draw, and it's very rare I go for a draw.
1-1 draw. Right, I'm agreeing with Sue. I think we'll win 2-1 at Coventry.
Come on. Come on, Sue.
We'll get back on track with 3 points against the Sky Blues. Jason Combs gone 2-2 draw. Just can't see us stopping them scoring. And he's always ended on a positive note there. Wilder out is enough, guys, and that's the beauty of it. You might not agree with people's opinions, but everyone's entitled to one, and that's Ibby's. Yeah. And like we say, that's the beauty of football. Everyone has their own opinions, but
of course, we all see a different game, don't we? As I said,
totally,
you know, it's just frustrating at the moment because we all want the same success. We all want it quick. Boro fans want it quick, and it doesn't happen overnight. You've got to work at it. For me, the Coventry game, we've got to scrap this formation because clearly it's not working.
Well, we will see.
I would play it as what I touched to win the show.
Okay, pal. Well, unfortunately, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. Many thanks to you all for watching and joining and taking part. Really enjoyed it. And thanks most of all to Guesty and Damon for joining me. Thanks for coming on the show, boys.
Thanks for having us, James.
No problem. Lovely to see you both again, lads. There'll be no Boro show next week because obviously there's no games this weekend. We'll be back 2 weeks tonight on the Tuesday to review the Coventry game and also preview the midweek home game with Birmingham City and the trip down to those lovable people in London, Millwall, when we take them on at the New Den. But until then, look after yourselves, take care, and up the Boro.
Up the Boro.